Hello, my friend. I hope you're doing well today. In this channel, we learn English through gentle historical stories, simple ideas, and meaningful moments. So take a breath, relax, and let's begin. Imagine a quiet night a long time ago. A small boy sits beside a weak candle flame. The room is simple. The walls are rough wood. The air is cold. Outside, the land is dark and silent. In his hands is an old, borrowed book. He reads slowly, carefully, almost as if every word carries a secret. He is not reading for school. He is reading because something inside him is hungry. Hungry to know. Hungry to understand. Hungry to become more than the hard life around him. That boy was Abraham Lincoln, and maybe that is the most beautiful place to begin. Not with power, not with fame, not with great speeches or a famous face on history's pages, but with a child in a wooden cabin, reaching toward knowledge in the quiet dark. Sometimes history begins in very small rooms. Abraham Lincoln was born on the 12th of February 1809 in Kentucky. He was born into poverty, and poverty was not just one part of his life. It shaped nearly everything around him. His first home was a small log cabin. His family had little money, little comfort, and very few possessions. His father, Thomas Lincoln, worked hard as a farmer. From a young age, Abraham helped with labor too. He carried water, chopped wood, and learned early that frontier life was not gentle. But in that difficult beginning, there was also love. His mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, was kind and deeply important to him. She helped form his sense of right and wrong. She taught him lessons about honesty, goodness, and compassion. Those lessons would stay with him for the rest of his life. When Abraham was still a boy, the family moved to Indiana. They hoped for better land and a better future. But life remained hard. The work was heavy, the land was rough. And then tragedy came. In 1818, his mother died of milk sickness. Abraham was only 9 years old. That kind of loss changes a child. It leaves a silence inside him that does not go away quickly. Lincoln would carry sadness with him for many years. People later saw a kind of sorrow in his face, a quiet heaviness in his expression. Perhaps some of that began in childhood, when he learned too early that love could disappear. About a year later, his father married again. His new wife, Sarah Bush Johnston, brought warmth into the home. She was kind, practical, and deeply caring. More than that, she noticed something special in Abraham. She saw how much he loved to learn. She encouraged him. She supported him. She brought books into the house and gave his growing mind room to breathe. Sometimes one person's belief can change the whole direction of a life. Lincoln had very little formal education. By his own later estimate, all his schooling added up to less than a year. But he refused to let that define him. He taught himself. He borrowed books from neighbors, sometimes walking long distances just to get one. He read by firelight after long days of work. He read slowly, carefully, and with deep attention. He did not just want to finish books. He wanted to understand them. Books became his doorway to a bigger world. He read history, biography, law, the Bible, and whatever else he could find. He wrote on wooden boards and scraps because paper was expensive. He thought deeply about language, about ideas, about human nature. If you believe quiet effort matters more than perfect conditions, comment 1. Some journeys begin with almost nothing, but still go farther than anyone expects. Lincoln also loved stories. He told them well. He could make people laugh. He could make them listen. Even before he entered public life, he was learning how powerful words could be when they carried truth. As he grew older, Lincoln stood out. He was very tall for his time, thin and unusual in appearance. Some people joked about how he looked, but Lincoln learned to live without vanity. He understood that appearance is not the same as character. What mattered most was not how a person looked, but how a person lived. As a young man, he worked many difficult jobs. He split rails for fences. He worked on boats. He did physical labor that made his body strong and his life demanding. He knew what ordinary work felt like. He knew exhaustion. He knew the kind of life lived by people without privilege. During one of his river journeys south, he saw enslaved people being bought and sold. Human beings were treated like property. Families could be separated. Freedom could be taken away as if it meant nothing. The sight stayed with him. It did not instantly solve the great moral question in his mind, but it left a wound there. A conviction began to grow. Slavery was not just a political issue, it was deeply wrong. In time, Lincoln moved to Illinois, which became his true adult home. There he began to shape a different future for himself. He did not want to spend his whole life doing only physical labor. He wanted to use his mind. He wanted to build something larger. So he studied law. He did not have money for a formal education. He studied by borrowing books and teaching himself, just as he had done for years. He read carefully, asked questions, and slowly built his knowledge. In time, he became a lawyer, and not just any lawyer. He became known as an honest one. People trusted him. They believed his word. He cared about fairness and justice, not just winning. In a world where ambition can make people slippery, Lincoln's honesty made him stand out. That reputation became one of the strongest foundations of his public life. He soon entered politics in Illinois. He did not sound polished in a grand or distant way. He spoke clearly, plainly, thoughtfully. People understood him. They felt that he respected ordinary people because he had lived an ordinary life himself. Around this time, he met Mary Todd. She came from a more educated and socially established background. Their relationship was not simple. They were different in many ways, and there were moments of uncertainty between them. But they married in 1842 and built a family together. Lincoln loved his children deeply. He could be playful and gentle at home. He told stories. He laughed with them. He was not only a public figure or a serious thinker. He was also a father with a warm heart. But sorrow visited his home again. 2 of his sons died young. Those losses were devastating. Grief had already shaped Lincoln's life, and now it returned with fresh force. Yet suffering did not make him hard. If anything, it seems to have deepened his compassion. That matters, because some people become wise through success, others become wise through sorrow. Lincoln seemed to carry both tenderness and pain together. By the 1850s, the United States was becoming more and more divided over slavery. Lincoln's voice on the issue grew stronger. He believed slavery was morally wrong. He believed the country could not ignore that truth forever. In 1858, he ran for the U.S. Senate against Stephen A. Douglas. Lincoln lost the election, but the debates between them made him famous across the country. In those 7 debates, he spoke with clarity about slavery and the future of the nation. He challenged the country to face its deepest contradiction. How could a nation speak of liberty while allowing human bondage? He did not win the office, but he gained something else. The nation heard him. That is one of the quiet lessons in his life. Losing is not always the end of movement. Sometimes defeat is the moment that reveals who you are. If that feels true to you, comment, true. Some losses do not close the road. They open a different one. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected President of the United States. It was an extraordinary rise. A boy from a log cabin, a self-taught reader, a lawyer who built himself page by page, now stood at the highest office in the land. But his victory did not bring peace. Even before he fully began his presidency, Southern states started leaving the Union. They formed the Confederacy. The nation was breaking apart, and the issue of slavery stood at the center of the storm. Soon the Civil War began. A civil war is one of the saddest kinds of conflict because it breaks a nation from within. It divides not only armies, but families, memories, and identities. Lincoln entered leadership at the very moment the country was falling into its darkest trial. The burden was enormous. The war would last 4 years. More than 600,000 people would die. Every choice carried terrible weight. Lincoln lived under constant pressure. He looked older as the war continued. His face seemed to hold the strain of the nation itself, and yet he remained steady. He was not steady because he felt no fear. He was steady because he kept carrying responsibility even while feeling sorrow deeply. At first, the war was centered on preserving the Union, but as the conflict continued, Lincoln moved more clearly toward a larger moral purpose. On the 1st of January 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring freedom for enslaved people in the Confederate States in rebellion. It did not end slavery everywhere at once, but it changed the meaning of the war. The struggle was now openly tied to human freedom. Later that same year, after the terrible Battle of Gettysburg, Lincoln gave one of the most famous speeches in American history. On the 19th of November, 1863, he stood at Gettysburg and spoke briefly, but with extraordinary power. In just a few minutes, he spoke of equality, sacrifice, democracy, and what he called a new birth of freedom. That phrase still feels alive today. A new birth of freedom. Not just survival, not just victory, but renewal. Lincoln understood something profound. Suffering must lead to meaning, or it becomes only pain. A wounded country had to decide what kind of future it would choose, smaller and colder, or wiser and more humane. By 1865, the war was ending. The Union would survive. Slavery would be abolished by the 13th Amendment. Lincoln had helped guide the country through its greatest crisis. He had carried grief, pressure, and responsibility on a scale almost impossible to imagine. And yet, even then, he was not speaking mainly of revenge. He wanted healing. He wanted reunion. He wanted the country to come back together with dignity. That may be one of the most moving things about him. At a moment when bitterness would have been understandable, he leaned toward mercy. But peace did not have time to settle. On the 14th of April, 1865, Lincoln went with Mary to Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. During the play, John Wilkes Booth shot him. Lincoln died the next morning, April 15. He was 56 years old. The nation was stunned. People mourned him, not only as a president, but as a symbol of hope, endurance, and moral courage. When we step back from the dates and the famous speeches, what do we really see? We see a child shaped by poverty, labor, and loss. We see a young man who refused to let limited schooling limit his mind. We see someone who built himself slowly through reading, discipline, and thought. We see a husband and father marked by love and grief. We see a leader who carried a broken nation through war. And through all of that, we see a person who kept returning to honesty, humility, and dignity. That is why Lincoln still matters. Not because his life was smooth, not because his path was easy, but because it was deeply human. He did not begin with advantage. He did not rise because the world opened easily for him. He rose because he kept growing under pressure. He kept learning when learning was difficult. He kept choosing principle when compromise would have been easier. He kept reaching toward what was right, even when the cost was high. There is something quietly comforting in that. So many people believe a meaningful life belongs only to those who start ahead, those with better circumstances, better support, better timing, better opportunities. But Lincoln's life tells a gentler truth. Your beginning may shape you, but it does not have to imprison you. You can begin in a small room and still grow into a large life. You can carry sorrow and still become a source of hope. You can be underestimated and still become unforgettable. And maybe that is why his story feels so fitting for an English learning journey too. Learning a language often feels quiet and humble. You read slowly, you listen carefully, you repeat simple things. Sometimes your progress is almost invisible. Sometimes it feels like small effort with no big result. But that is not the full truth. Quiet effort changes you. Lincoln reading by candlelight did not look dramatic. A borrowed book did not look powerful. A self-taught boy in a cabin did not look like the future president of the United States. And yet all of that quiet effort was building something real. That is how growth often works. It happens softly before it becomes visible. Every page matters. Every new word matters. Every story you stay with matters. So when we listen to Abraham Lincoln's story, we are not only learning history, we are also hearing a reminder for our own lives. Stay curious. Stay steady. Stay honest. Keep building yourself, especially in ordinary hours. That is where so much of life is truly formed. If this story left something warm in your heart, comment, hope, and stay with me for more gentle history stories in English, one story at a time. Abraham Lincoln's life does not promise us an easy road. It tells us something deeper. Hardship does not get the final word. Character matters. Compassion matters. Courage matters. And the quiet habit of continuing matters more than we often realize. So wherever you are in your own journey today, remember this. You do not need a perfect beginning to move toward a meaningful future. You only need the willingness to keep learning, to keep growing, and to keep walking forward with honesty in your heart. And perhaps that is the most beautiful part of Lincoln's story. Not that he became famous, not that he became powerful, but that through loss, struggle, and great responsibility, he kept reaching toward what was right. And maybe, in our own smaller and quieter ways, we can do the same. Thank you for being here with me today. I hope this story made your English learning feel a little lighter and a little easier. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and stay with me on this journey. And if there's a story or topic you'd like to hear next, leave it in the comments. I'd love to make more videos for you. Take care, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next story.